Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. So I wasn't going to make a video on this particular topic, but I think it would be a disservice if I didn't at least give my commentary. So as some of you are probably aware by now, Heritage Auctions recently auctioned off a large collection of factory sealed, and some were not factory sealed, Atari games graded by WATA, and they sold for exorbitant prices. So I want to talk a little bit about this and give you my feedback, because I don't think a lot of people realize that the quantity of factory sealed Atari games eclipses the quantity of factory sealed Nintendo games on the secondary market by a large margin. Just to put this in perspective, in 1983, 1984, when the video game market, or I should say the home video game market, crashed, there were a lot of distributors and a lot of retailers out there that literally had pallets, if not truckloads, of factory sealed Atari 2600 games on hand. And much to the disbelief of the overall collecting community today, a lot of these items were not destroyed. You know, we've all seen the documentary where they go out into the New Mexico landfill and they try to dig up some of these old Atari games that Time Warner, who owned Atari at that time, dumped in the landfill, covered up with cement, and pretty much drove off, trying to forget that the whole experience of 1983 and 1984 ever occurred, and that pretty much Atari went bust at that particular time. Well, ironically, a lot of retailers, a lot of distributors who had access to these games didn't dump them in a landfill. A lot of them were sold into the secondary market. Some of them ended up in prominent collectors' collections. Some of them also ended up in a lot of liquidating companies' inventories. Meaning, back in the 1990s and the early 2000s, there was a company called O'Shea Limited out in Kansas City where you could order factory sealed Atari 2600 and Atari 7800 games for as little as 65 cents a game. Let me say that again, for as little as 65 cents a game. Well, now, in the year 2020, because there's this excellent speculative market for all these collectible video games, a lot of these people that are seeing these Nintendo games go for 5 digits or 5 figures or $10,000 a game, they all want to get their hands on this particular market. So what do you think they're doing? They're sending in these factory sealed Atari games, getting them graded through WATA, and they're flipping them on the secondary market, but they're careful that they're not releasing them all at once. They're getting them graded, they're consigning them to Heritage Auctions, and they're being very careful over how many copies get released in the market at one time, because there's a massive supply of these items. So all you got to do is log on to www.ha.com, which is Heritage Auctions site. You have to sign in, so you do have to have a free account to sign in. And all you got to do is type in WATA space Atari, click enter, and then hit view past sale prices. And you're going to get a listing of all these games that have sold for exorbitant prices over the last few weeks. Now, I'm going to give you some examples in this particular video. On May 1st, 2020 of this year, a factory sealed copy of Mario Brothers for the Atari 2600. This is not the black box Nintendo game. This is the game that was released in 1988 for the Atari 2600. It's the silver box version of Mario Brothers, graded by WATA Games in 9.2 condition. 9.2 condition translates to near mint minus. So this is not a top graded copy. This is not a 9.8 graded copy of this game. It is 9.2 condition. You know, this factory sealed copy of Mario Brothers in 9.2 grade condition for the Atari 2600 sold for $9,000. The person that bought this item has to have their head examined. This is an overblown speculative market where all these starry-eyed speculators and unsophisticated investors are coming to gamble. This is Las Vegas. This is no longer the collectibles marketplace. The people that are paying these premiums for some of these items are going to get burned badly over the next coming years. Even if they attempt to hold these items for 10, 20, 30 years, they're going to get slaughtered when they go to sell them back into the marketplace. No one is going to care about a factory sealed copy of Mario Brothers from 1988 in 9.2 condition, no less? And ironically, there's a lot of these copies that are still in existence out there in collectors' inventories. You know, guys, one of the things you really got to be careful about, before this auction of these Atari games, no one ever thought of sending and consigning graded Atari games to Heritage Auctions or any of these other auction companies out there. This was a first-to-market success story where the person who consigned these games knew what he was doing. He's going to make a fortune off this stuff. And you want to know what's going to happen? The poor Timmy Poindexter out there that paid $9,000 for this copy of Mario Brothers for the Atari 2600 9.2 condition, 5, 10, 15 years from now, he's going to go to sell this back onto the market, and it's going to go for an extremely low amount. And he's going to consider the antiques and collectibles trade a scam, not realizing that he failed to do the proper research that would have particularly got him in a better market to invest in long term. Let me give you an example of what I mean. In April, the end of April of this year, Heritage Auctions held the Central States Coin and Currency Auction. Now, ironically, due to the coronavirus, you couldn't attend this auction in person, so it was online bidding only. Well, I bidded on a couple of items, and one thing that really caught my eye was this $18.99 $2 silver certificate, graded by PMG in 65 EPQ condition. And this particular item, in this condition, from $18.99, sold, I paid $2,569.96 for this $18.99 $2 silver certificate. Now, this is an investment grade collectible if you choose to invest in the United States paper money or collectible currency marketplace. This would be considered an investment grade item. This copy of Mario Brothers from 1988, graded by WATA in 9.2 condition for the Atari 2600, is number one, not an investment grade item, and the market isn't even established. Yet this person paid $9,000 for this particular item. So I'm going to ask you, and this video will remain on YouTube as long as this particular channel ceases, or I should say, assumes to exist. Meaning, I'm not going to delete this video. But let me ask you something. Who do you think made the better investment choice in this scenario? Me, who paid $2,569.96 for a $2 silver certificate from $18.99, graded by PMG in 65 EPQ condition, or a person who paid $9,000 for a factory sealed copy of Mario Brothers, graded by WATA Games in 9.2 condition from 1988? Please let me know in the comments section, because I need to make sure that I'm not crazy when I analyze these markets, because this price is insane for how many of these games exist in factory sealed condition on the secondary market. It's true, not all of them have yet to be graded by WATA Games, but I guarantee you there's Atari collectors who are coming onto this website, Heritage Auctions, looking at this sale price going, hey, I have 5 of these in my collection. I'm going to send 3 of them or 4 of them off to get graded with WATA Games, and I'm going to try to flip them on the secondary market. So now, not only do we have a gold rush in vintage factory sealed Nintendo games on our hand, congratulations, whoever manipulated this market, we're now going to have a gold rush of Atari 2600 factory sealed games, because now they can be graded and flipped for a significant premium on the secondary market. And if you think this price is insane, wait, there's more. So let's talk about some of the Parker Brothers releases that came out for the Atari 2600 back in 1982. We have a Spider-Man and a Frogger game from 1982 that were graded by WATA Games in 9.8 condition. Now, to be fair, before anybody says anything about the content of this video, I understand 9.8 condition is pretty much up there as a top tier investment grade collectible if this market would be established. Unfortunately, the market for collectible video games isn't established. So we don't know at present time just how many other 9.8 copies of these games are out there. But somebody did consign to Heritage Auctions a 9.8 graded copy of Spider-Man for the Atari 2600 and a 9.8 factory sealed copy of Frogger for the Atari 2600. Well, the Spider-Man game went for $9,000. The copy of Frogger went for $5,040. Now, to be fair, these are not rare games. These aren't even scarce games. A lot of collectors have a lot of these factory sealed games already in their collections. And once they see these auction prices, I guarantee you, some of them, not all, are going to send them to get these items graded and possibly flip them on the secondary market. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, there are more auctions that we have to discuss in this video, because a copy of Space Invaders from 1980 that was released for the Atari 2600 and graded 9.4 condition sold for $2,880, and a copy of Pac-Man that was released in 1982 for the Atari 2600, arguably one of the worst home versions of that particular game ever created, was graded by WATA in 9.4 condition, and it sold for $2,640. Now, you may sit there and you may look at these prices and you go, well, hey, Sean, this market obviously has legs. People are paying these prices and they want these items because they think they're going to go up in value even more. Well, that's just the problem, guys. Let me use this as an analysis. A copy of Pitfall that was released in 1982, graded by WATA Games in 9.6 condition, sold for $2,400 in this same auction. But ironically, a copy of Pitfall 2, The Lost Caverns, which was released in 1984 for the Atari 2600 in 9.8 condition. The Pitfall, the original Pitfall that was sold for $2,400, was in 9.6 condition. This copy of Pitfall 2 is in 9.8 condition, was released in 1984. It only sold for $720. Now, if you analyze this market, you're going to come to an interesting conclusion. There were more copies of Pitfall 1 produced and manufactured than there were of Pitfall 2. In fact, Pitfall 2 was released for the Atari 2600 during the great video game crash. It still had a pretty large production run, but the game did not have as many copies sold as the original Pitfall that was released back in 1982. Well, ironically, the Pitfall 2 cartridge is graded 9.8 condition. The original Pitfall cartridge that was also sold during this auction was graded 9.6 condition. So the point I'm trying to make is a copy of Pitfall 2 that is ironically more scarce in high grade only sold for $720. But a copy of the original Pitfall that was released in 1982 and was one of the most popular games for the Atari 2600 ever sold for $2,400 in 9.6 condition. So do you see what I'm saying, guys? The people that are involved in this market don't know what they're doing. They're starry-eyed speculators or they're unsophisticated investors. Now, that being said, now that we're 13 minutes into this video, do I think that there are some people operating in this market that are serious investors that really have the know-how to hold some of these games for the long term and turn a profit? The answer is yes, but they're literally negated to 1 to 5% of the overall market. And number two, a lot of these people that do have that knowledge are selling into this market. They're not buying into it. There are certain people out there that are going after some of the more hard to find titles that are selling for close to 6 figures or more on the secondary marketplace at present time. But the average people involved in this market do not know what they're doing. It's the blind leading the blind and market manipulators leading everyone else. There's a lot of people, guys, operating in this market who I can tell you firsthand are manipulating this market for their own liking and for their own profit taking. I've said this before. If video games are such a great long-term investment, how come most long-term collectors are now selling into the market rather than buying into it? Sure, again, if you're involved in the 1 top 1 to 5% of the market, like the dentist. Everybody wants me to comment on the dentist who paid somewhere close to $1 million for certain quote-unquote rare factory sealed WATA graded video games. And I did not want to comment on that directly because I don't know the specifics of what that person bought and how he was geared towards investing in those items over the long term. Well, ironically, he did make a comment on some of my videos where I talk about these subjects in depth. And I appreciate that because it kind of allowed me to get a greater insight into what he's doing and how he views this particular marketplace. And I can tell you, he's operating from an investment standpoint where he is going after items that are, again, in the top 1 to 5% of the trade. The average Timmy coming into this market is not paying $50,000 to $100,000 for one of these games. The average Timmy coming into this market is paying $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, maybe upwards of $7,000 for some of these games. And unfortunately, he's misinterpreting the market overall. He doesn't understand that a lot of these prices and a lot of these items are being manipulated by market manipulators who know exactly what they're doing. They're educated in economics. They're educated in finance. I've been involved in this market a little bit, very loosely, but I will tell you, I have consigned certain items to certain auction houses at present time that are pretty much guaranteed to sell for some of these high prices. And ironically, I didn't do it in my own name. I actually reached out to someone else who was consigning items to these auction houses, and we're kind of working as a group where some of us are getting together some of these graded games, and we're saying, okay, you submit these to WATA Games, you get them graded, and we'll flip them on Heritage, we'll flip them through Certified Link, and we'll do it under one person's name so it can't be traced back to all of us. Now, I know some of you think that that is unethical or illegal. I assure you it's not. A lot of people do that in the antiques and collectibles trade in a lot of these markets. That being said, I want to warn you guys, there are market manipulators who I am in contact with on a daily basis who are manipulating the hell out of this market. And they're doing the same thing, ironically, with Pokemon. Pokemon right now is in a massive speculative bubble. And I keep hearing people comment on that, but they're always shot down by the starry-eyed speculators who follow the crowd and claim, no, that market isn't in a speculative bubble. That market has legs. Guys, whenever you see items selling on the secondary market for an insane sum, and the prices keep going up in value when all logic and reasoning should tell you that these items are not worth this much, you really have to use caution. That should not be an indicator that it's okay to invest in that market because other people are paying these prices. What it could be is market manipulation at work. And if you want more information as to how market manipulation works, all you got to do is read this book right here. I'm not going to even state the title because I did a whole video on this. This has been the subject in the antiques and collectibles trade, going back literally to the 1960s, where people learned, hey, we can manipulate these markets. We can get these people to buy these mass-produced items at a significant premium. Then when the market craters, we pretty much already sold off our holdings. And guess what? All the speculators out there are left holding these items that they can't flip for 50% of the price that they paid for them. You must understand, organic demand is not in this market at present time. It is not. These are not established collecting categories. So all is what I'm going to say and how I'm going to end this video is, if you are going after factory sealed video games, vintage video games, or if you are interested in Atari graded video games by WATA, I understand. We all have an attachment to this stuff. But please, analyze the market before paying $9,000, $7,000, $5,000 for a common as day Atari game that really, if you are paying that price, it tells me you do not understand the dynamics of this marketplace at present time. So that's all I'm going to state in this video. I'm going to leave it there. I value your feedback in the comment section below. If you want me to reveal more about what I'm selling in this particular marketplace, because I know I'm going to get critics who are going to come on this channel and go, look at that. That Sean guy's manipulating the market. He won't tell us what he's doing. I will gladly open up about the items that I'm selling, the items that I'm cautious about, and the items that I actually think will go up in value over the long term. Because believe it or not, this market, 1 to 3% of those items, I'm going to tell you, is poised for long-term growth. But none of the items that I'm being shown sold in this particular auction are those items, unfortunately. So I would love to do more videos on this, guys. Let me know what you think. I'm sorry, I do tend to get a little bit emotional in these videos because I just really feel sorry for these guys that think a factory-sealed copy of Mario Brothers from 1988, released for the Atari 2600, 9.2 condition, is worth $9,000. It's not. Even though the market at present time says that, it's not a wise investment overall. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate all my viewers and subscribers. Again, I value your feedback and comments on this video. And again, if needed, we'll gladly do a follow-up to this. Thanks and good night.